Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 195 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people are making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today we've got a few exhibit animals. Scott coming in clutch. I know Scott loves the exhibit animals, so I'm quite excited to get stuck into these ones. We've also got Great Cakes mod also kind of, dominating the habitat scene. So we've pretty much only got Scott and Great Cakes for mods today, but they've got a very great assortment. So we're going to be starting off today. We've got Mecarina. So these are a species of Goliath beetle called the Comet flower beetle, or Mecarina. Let's have a look at these guys in here, so you can see them in here. Let's see if we can find one in the light. That's that we want to see them. Bloody cool, aren't they? Look at this one, how beautiful. So these are a family in Goliathany, so these are a type of Goliath beetle. And they were created by this genus was created by Frederick William Hone in 1837. And according to the last work of De Palma and Fintus, the type of species of genus is Scarabenus polycephalus, which is now, Mecarinocephalus polyphelmus. And these guys are found all across tropical Africa. So there is a few different species now. This species itself is Mecarina krenski, which is like a really cool species, the comet flower. And they're actually semi-common in the pet trade. But it looks like really, really cool. So your type of Goliath beetle. There isn't actually too much information you can find. So you can see the comet flower beetle, or Mecarina krenski, is a large species of horned flower beetle found in Cameroon. There appear to be a few colour forms, but mostly black with white stripes or striped patterns on their abdomen, with larvae feeding on decaying wood and leaf litter, similar to other Goliath beetles. And adults will consume a variety of fruit. Let's see what other information. Their black bodies aligned with constricts of yellow to resemble comets trailing in the night sky. That's kind of a cool one as well. They've eaten a variety of fruits, such as banana, apple, pear, peach, and watermelon in captivity. The species implements for gigantic lace-like horns that are tipped and red. Males are larger than females and bear forked horns used in soving matches with other males to protect their claims for food or mate. And they are in the subfamily Cetoni in the tribe Goliathany, so they're a type of Goliath beetle. And they don't share any benefits with anyone. So that's another really cool Scott mod, Love a good Scott mod. So we're going to be moving on to our next species already. Not too much information on this guy, which is a little bit sad. But next up we have got a really, really cool one here. Another one done by Scott. We've got the Goliath, the Colombian giant tarantula. So let's have a look at this guy. Hiding in here. Looks real cute. Let's see if we can find one in the light. That one's not quite light enough. Here we are. Perfect. Look at this guy. This is Metaphominda robustum. So this is known as the Colombian giant tarantula, or the Colombian giant redleg. These guys were first described by Anton and Suhr in 1875. So found in tropical rainforests of Colombia and Brazil near logs. They have a leg span about 6 to 8 inches and will eat crickets, large insects, small mice, and small lizards and mice. So you can see they're quite a deep colour as their carapace, with a pale orange colour as well. Their osteostoma is also kind of a deep black colour with orange hairs, and most of the legs, with the exception of the femurs, are black, but bright orange and covered in orange hairs. So these guys are found, as I mentioned, in the tropical rainforests of Colombia and Brazil. The average yearly rainfall in this area is about 2,500 millimeters, and average temperature is usually above 23 degrees. They are home to this is home to plants such as casavella plants and animals such as lance-tailed manakin and the glass frogs, which is quite cool. In terms of behavior, these guys are typically shy by nature, but are more willing to be defensive than other New World species, but they'll usually flee instead of putting up a defensive pose, although their threat pose is quite unique, as they own some barbs on their back legs, and they will lunge with those legs or will spin in a circle to confuse their attacker. And as terrestrial tarantulas, they aren't at all active outside really their hide, so they tend to just like in their hide and chill, and do their own thing. But now a really cool species, another great one done by Scott. So we'll move on to another species also done by Scott, we've got the Madagascar sunset moth, so a really cool species, or Cristella ripens, if you say that. So even though it looks quite a bit like a butterfly, this is actually a moth. So here's a perfect look at this one. So the Madagascar, I like the Madagascar sunset moth, would be a better name, but the Madagascar sunset moth. These guys are species of day-flying moth in the family Uraniidae, and actually one of the most impressive and appealing-looking lepidopterans, which are the group includes butterflies and moths. Famous worldwide, they are featured on most coffee table books on Lepidoptera, and their names are ripens, so they're quite famous in that regard. In terms of taxonomy, they were first described by British entomologist Drew Drury in 1773 after he caught a specimen obtained from a Captain May of Hammersmith. And because of its resemblance to swallowtail butterflies, it was thought to be a member of this butterfly group, but is actually found due to different anatomical differences to be a moth. So it's actually a moth. And the native Malagasy people call it the Adriandolo or Lolandrina, which means kind of the spirit butterfly or king butterfly, king spirit, something like that. And the genus itself is entirely African, and the only other species in its genus is the East African species C. cineris. And they're one of the 3 diurnal urulin genera, so they're kind of day-flying moths. So in terms of its wingspan, they have a wingspan of about 7 to 9 centimeters, or about 2.8 to 3.5 inches, and sometimes even up to 11 centimeters, in about 4.3 inches. Moths from highlands tend to have a median wingspan of 7, though in lower altitudes they have a higher of 9, so it kind of depends on their size. And even though they have colourful wings, they, as I mentioned, easily mistaken for butterflies, but they actually are a moth, definitely 100% a moth. And you can see they are black with iridescent red, blue, and green markings, with the fringe of white scales on the edges, as you can see there. Then the moth has 6 tails, very often lost or damaged in life. And pattern variations are common, but most often partly asymmetrical, so it's quite cool. So in terms of habitat, it was believed to originally come from China, but is now known as endemic or only found in Madagascar, with thousands of annual moths being migrating different populations across Madagascar. They are found quite a bit around the place. So they feed on different species of Athalma plants, which is their host plants, that can be found across most of Madagascar. And though largely in protected areas where these rainforests, the host plants are quite safe in there, and they will migrate in response of changes in these house plants. So they tend to defoliate the whole plant and even eat the fruits and flowers, and then kind of move on to the next one, so they kind of migrate in that regard. But in terms of behavior, unlike most moths, as mentioned, they are day-flying and have bright asymmetric colors, which warn predators of toxicity as well. And they can they migrate and they roost in the group for the night, and they can obviously fly up to be carried about 100 meters sometimes at the crowded trees. And if they fall, their wings close to the ground. So these guys, as they live in a little bit more tropical habitat, continuous generations of this moth are actually present all year. The highest populations are found in May to August, which is fall and winter, and the lowest from October to December in spring. And the females lay their eggs late in the afternoon or at nightfall, and locate these possible sites to lay their eggs visually. And like the eggs of other members of its group, they are domed with projecting ribs. A single egg is about 1 millimeter long and has about 17 ribs, and that kind of allows them to stick to things. After they hatch, the small caterpillar will only eat the tissues of the veins of the leaves, and they avoid the sticky and toxic latex as well. But after 3 to 4 days, they will start to eat flowers, tendrils, pedipalps, and these kind of young stems. So they kind of eat all that. And actually spin silk in their mouths using a kind of affinity motion with the heads and walk, what keeps them falling from the smooth surface of the leaf as well. So the silk protects them and allows them to climb on the leaf and stay there. And there are 4 instars, and the caterpillar stage lasts 2 months in the warm season and 2.5 months in the cold season. The caterpillar whitish yellow and black spots on feet happen as well, and they have paired legs about 3 to 6 or even to 10. After completing the last molt, they go through the typical caterpillar, they spin a cocoon out of silk, and then they kind of find the space for this cocoon between the 2 leaves, between moss and bark, and the cocoon takes about 10 hours to spin, and metamorphosis takes about 29 hours later. It lasts for about 6 minutes, and the duration slightly lasts. And then the chrysalis stage lasts about 17 days in November, the warmest month, and 23 days in July, the coldest month. And then they kind of come out and do the butterfly thing, kind of go out and get the hemolymph and let that dry out, and then they go off and fly, which is quite cool. So in terms of adults, they feed on nectar. So adults will kind of, they prefer yellowish, whitish yellow or yellowish flowers and nectar source. So they tend to prefer those whiter flowers, like mango or tea leaves or something as well. And as I mentioned, they are quite a spectacular looking moth. We'll actually try and find one in flying around. Here's one flying around. It's quite a spectacular moth, and actually one considered one of the most beautiful and impressive lepidopterans, rivaling pretty much all butterflies with their colour and form as well. And they're featured on many, coffee tables, things like that, and amateur collectors as well. So they're quite prominent in both the culture of, European culture, but also Malagasy. They are considered, kind of a butterfly or moth of the soul, the lobo, and there's little doubt they remain a covenant corpse as well. So they kind of believe that the soul of a dead and the ancestors appears in the form of a butterfly, so that's basically a dead ancestor. But yeah, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan of that. Love a good butterfly. So I'll let you fly off and do your things. So, next up, we've got lots and lots of great cakes mods today. We've got all 4 of these are great cakes. So we're going to get started off with some birds. I know we love birds. Here we've got the Rufus Hornbill, or the Northern Rufus Hornbill, which is a distinct subspecies that this is particular bee, but the Rufus Hornbill, or Buceros hydrocorax. These guys are known also as the Philippine Hornbill, or locally as the Kalau. These are large species of hornbill found endemic in the Philippines, so they're found there and nowhere else, and they're the largest hornbill in the country. They're referred to locally as the cloak of the mountains due to their large booming call, which they typically call of every hour. And they typically occur in moist lowland tropical forests, but are now considered sadly threatened due to declines because of habitat destruction, hunting, poaching, and illegal pet trade. So as I mentioned, they aren't endemic to the Philippines, so they're only found there and nowhere else in the world. Where it occurs in primary and secondary forest. We'll have a look at another one over here. Why not have a look at you since you're perched? Though you're floating, but we'll have a look at you still. They even be found in disturbed forest too. They're found across the majority of the country, except for the western, the regions of Minopos Sulu and western Viatis, I believe you say that. They're described as a large bird. You can see definitely quite a big bird with dark body, rufous legs, chest and neck, an off-white tail and a yellow throat. The dominant subspecies, which is this one, is the bill is entirely red, while the other subspecies have pale yellow kind of on the front end. Birds are also sexually dimorphic, with females having striking electric blue eyes and a smaller carapace and no eye ring, while the males have yellow eyes and a much larger carapace. So you can see this one's a female, I believe. Yeah, that's a female. Let's see if we can spot the male. So this is the male here, I think. So you can see it's got yellow eyes and a much bigger cask. To display, to get all the ladies. And there's 3 different subspecies, as we kind of mentioned before. Not too much difference between them, though. Let's look at the baby while we get a chance. Really, really cute. Anyway, in terms of behaviour and ecology, they're sometimes called the cloak of the mountains because they can have loud calls, and they can be heard up to 1.5 kilometres away. But just due to their large size, also make a distinct whirring sound when they fly, and can be prey for the Philippine eagle. They can often be seen in flocks of up to 12 birds, and sometimes they can be seen with withered hornbills and forming flocks up to 20. In terms of feeding, they play a crucial role in the ecosystem, and they are a keystone species because of their omnivorous habits. That allows them to disperse seeds across the place, and they can, because they eat a lot of fruits, but I mentioned they will also eat, small animals and things like that. Allows them to disperse seeds from the forest floor from the fish they consume and control pest populations of insects. So they are quite important in the ecosystem in that regard. So in terms of breeding, they lay eggs from March to May, but juveniles have been seen as late in November in Luzon. And they nest in the cavities of large diandocarp trees at about 15 to 30 metres above the ground. As with the hornbills, the female will actually seal themselves within the next cavity where they lay their clutch and then remain with the growing young for most of all the nesting period. In some species, the male will help with the sealing process from outside the nest cavity, and the female will lay 2 white eggs, which weigh about 465 to 480 grams. And nesting and the female are fed by the male through the narrow slit left in the opening of the nest. And the nestlings are fed by them, and at the times joined by non-breeding helper birds. And nesting time will last average 4 to 6 months, and during the duration the male will provide food for his confined female and nestlings. They are monogamous and maintain a year-round pair bonds, and will be paired together for many years' time and engage in courtship behaviours. So they are quite monogamous. In terms of their habitat and conservation status, they like primary forest, but also use secondary forests, and they are classed as vulnerable, and is believed they are more threatened as the National List of Threatened Terrestrial Fauna has classified them as endangered. So the big threats they face is substantial hunting pressure and widespread loss of habitat, results of logging and conversion to agriculture. So the trees that they like to live in and nest in, there's lacks of suitable nesting sites in most of their range. But also hunters will climb up the tree to capture the mother and the chick for the illegal wildlife trade. And their hunting and sport has also been recorded in its range. Though the northern Rufus Hornbill actually occurs in plenty of protected areas, so they are doing okay, and same with the southern. However, despite occurring in multiple protection areas, they are still hunted, and illegal logging happens because the laws are lax. So they are mostly protected, but there is, just how well those are enforced, which is a little bit sad, but they are doing okay for the most part. Vulnerable is not too bad. But yeah, they just need to keep an eye on it. Very, very beautiful animal. I do like this. And another, of course, another winner for Great Cakes. Always doing a great job. So, next up, we have got the white-tailed eagle. So this is going to be a bit of a longer one. Also done by Great Cakes Mods. So another really cool one here. So the white-tailed eagle, Halictus albicina, commonly known as just the sea eagle. These guys are a large species of bird of prey that are found wide across temperate Eurasia. They can be found from Japan right up to Greenland, so they're quite a wide range. There. In terms of taxonomy, they were first described by Carl Linnaeus in 1758 as Falco albicina, then were described in the genus 1809 Halictus, which kind of means sea eagle, and albicina means white-tailed, so literally their name in Latin means white-tailed sea eagle, which is quite interesting. And there's about 11 different species in that genus today. And the latter group of the lesser, the Great British eagle as well, differ mostly in the history. So there's a little bit of variety there. These guys form a species pair with the bald eagle. They diverged from sea eagles, the sea eagles at the beginning of the Miocene. So they are, very similar to bald eagles, but they are distant, not the same thing. They're different, which is interesting. And there's actually eagles occur on the Hawaiian Islands only as vagrants, but apparently there are bones from extinct populations of eagles from the Quaternary that are believed to be related to the closest relative of white-tailed eagles that may have diverged during the Middle Pleistocene. So there may be an isolated local resident population in Hawaii for more than 100,000 years, where it would have been a terrestrial predator, making sure that nothing gets too out of balance. Another really cool one there. In terms of its size, it is one of the largest living birds of prey. It is the largest of the dozens of eagles found in Europe, and the largest eagle across its range, except in the Russian Far East, where it coexists with the Steller sea eagle. But is often considered the 4th largest eagle in the world, and on average the 4th heaviest. So the only eagles that are bigger are the Steller sea eagle, the harpy eagle, and the Philippine eagle. So it's kind of in order: Steller sea eagle, harpy eagle, Philippine eagle, and then it's the white-tailed eagle. The white-tailed eagle measures anywhere from 66 to 94 centimeters, or 26 to 37 inches in total length, as a wingspan of about 1.78 to 2.45 to 5'10" to 8 feet in length, which may have the largest wingspan of any living eagle, but the Steller sea eagle, which is larger in weight, total length, and non-wingspan measurements. So it is kind of hotly debated. There's a lot of few eagles that are quite big that live today. It's kind of neither here nor there, but they are definitely up there with some of the bigger eagles. And also depends. There's also different trends of things you can see. More northern eagles tend to be larger than southern eagles, which is interesting as well. But in terms of general body mass, they tend to range from 4 to 6.9 kilograms, or 8 to 15 pounds for females, with males being a bit smaller at about 3.1 to 5.4 kilograms, between 6 to 11 pounds. So that's kind of on standard with most eagle species as well. In terms of its colouring, you can see it's not very interesting in terms of its colouring. It's got like a greyish mid-brown colour overall, with its plumage being uniform over most of its body and wings, with some parts being paler. But also it's got like this underside, and the tail feathers are a little bit more light coloured than the white, and then you can see it's got its head as like a dark kind of gets pale wings head. And the adults typically they can have darker heads on average, but as they get older, you can see they got this kind of like white head going on. Not as like stunning as a bald eagle, but you can see it's quite similar in that regard. And you can see this is what they look like as a juvenile. And sometimes they can actually keep those darker heads into adulthood. So it just kind of depends on that regard, which is interesting. In terms of vocalizations, they are not loud or impressive for the size of the bird. They make kind of very quiet kind of croaks and things like that, but they do make a few sounds as well. But as I mentioned, they have quite a wide range. They are found from northern Europe and northern Asia. That's where they breed, but the range extends as far west as southern Greenland, north to western Ireland, and there have been some reintroduced populations into some areas of England, and they can be found in Ireland, Scotland. In mainland Europe, they have the largest breeding population in coastal Norway, but they can be found pretty much all across Europe, and all the way over to the White Sea in North Korea and Japan. So they've got quite a wide range in that regard, but they tend to breed more northerly. They more southern areas need to be typically is where they just go to like summer and things like that. The wintering range is well understood, so they tend to go to kind of areas like Spain and Portugal in the winter just to get a little bit more nice food as well. South Korea is another place, and coastal Alaska. Just places a little bit warmer for them to get food. But they don't really come into America because that's when they start to kind of compete with the bald eagle. In terms of their habitat, they can be found in quite varied habitat, but generally like areas with water and lowland areas. Although mainly lowland species, they can be found at quite high altitudes, and in coastal areas they may even be seen on high sea cliffs or down in archipelagos and things like that. Marshes, lots of places with water, as they like things like that. Some areas as well, they will occur where there's heavy fishing, especially in Japan, though they typically require secluded woods, forested areas, groups of tall mature trees around ecosystems that are wetlands and things like that. And in some areas they'll even visit commercial fish farms and ponds where there's easy accessible food. That's quite fun as well. In terms of their breeding, however, they spend much of the day perched in trees and often not move for hours, but even up to 90% of their day they might just spend perching. In terms of migrations, they're considered rather inconsistent in their migration, so they seldom migrate to the western part of their range, but they will kind of sometimes head more south, depending on the severity of winters. So they don't migrate every year like a lot of other species. Are kind of more sporadic and as needed. That's probably the best way to put it. And in terms of their territoriality, they may vary between 52 to 415 kilometers in size, or 20 to 160 square miles in their area of what they need to protect. But it's usually less than about 50 square miles, or less than 130 kilometers squared, depending. But they does depend on the variety of food and what they can find. In terms of their dietary behavior, they are very generalistic and optimistic. They mostly prey on fish, birds, and most secondary mammals, with being quite powerful predators that are able to eat things quite easily. They'll also scavenge as well, and usually wait for carrion or like corvids and things like that. So how they typically hunt is a sit and wait style. So they'll look and sit in a tree like this one's doing right now, watch for prey, and then they dive down on it and get it with its claws. And that's typically how they'll do it. And they'll also follow fishing boats and things like that to find prey. And they've been known to hunt mallards and even other species of raptor, and they even will scavenge on pretty much everything they can find. So they are very generalist in that diet. In terms of fish, they've recorded to eat about 70 different species of fish as well, and they're known to hunt both fresh and saltwater fish. They've one large halibut they actually managed to get as well. They even will drive away things like ospreys, northern pikes. So there's quite a few fish varieties they will take. and they typically get between, you know, up to about, the largest individuals can bring down like 3 kilo cods, which is quite interesting as well. They've also been recorded eating about 170 different species of birds, which is the most diverse prey that they'll eat. They'll eat lots of waterfowl, diving ducks, eiders, dabbling ducks, loons, grebes, goshawks, swans. They'll even take sometimes. So they'll even take that on the right equations, even though they're so much bigger, which is quite interesting as well. So they'll feed on a wide variety of those kind of foods. Even recorded even pheasants and capercaillies and small passerines like starlings and crows, storks, goose, geese, Canada geese as well, cranes. So they do eat a wide variety of birds. In terms of mammals and other prey, they don't really eat as much mammals, but they will eat them. They'll eat mountain hares, rabbits, muskrats, red squirrels, voles, shrews, even beavers, nutras. They've been known to attack, and they'll also be known to scavenge from horses, mook, and bison carcasses as well. Even roe deer, red deer, they've been known to scavenge their carcasses. And there's only been really 6 species known of reptiles and amphibians they'll eat, but that's typically because they probably don't encounter too much. They'll also be known to hunt cephalopods like the robust chinhooks would and the giant Pacific octopus, and eat clams and things like that. And because they're an apex predator in the ecosystem, in many cases they're actually able to compete with many other large raptors, and often will kind of beat them up and steal food from them, and even mob them. But they'll in turn sometimes get mobbed by buzzards and things. But they'll steal food from ospreys, which are much smaller than them, but in turn they might get mobbed. So it's kind of one of those things. You typically size dominance hierarchy, so the bigger eagle, gets all the food. And they do prey, as I mentioned, prey upon smaller birds of prey. They even be known to prey on American mink and European mink, polecats, otters as well. That's become prey for them, but also can sometimes eat them. Even seals, up to 20 kilograms have been observed eating. And there was actually one attacking a porpoise, harbour porpoise, which is quite interesting. So in terms of breeding season, the breeding season's from January to July. We'll actually have a look at the baby while we get a chance. Where are you? There you are. From January to July in the south of their range, but April, September in the northern parts of their range. They do pair for life, like other species of eagle, and the pair is formed when a permanent home range is chosen, and they typically engage during early spring in these kind of fly dancing, sky dancing, other types of displays. But it's when they kind of, fall in love with each other. They kind of hold in all those famous kind of grappling as well. In terms of their nest, they're not too different from other species of eagle. They'll make quite a large nest in large trees. That could be quite huge. It depends on the species of what's local, but they can have them up to 25 meters in the air, and sometimes up to 7 meters off the ground. Sometimes, just depending on the variety. They can be roughly about 1 meter across and about 2 meters deep, lined with large logs, but also lined with greenery, seaweed, wool, all sorts of things as well. And that's what they line it with. And the male kind of often brings nesting branches, while the female does a lot of the constructing. And they will also use nests built by other species, kind of scaring them away and then stealing, and make it on themselves. That's where they take it. And then they lay eggs, so they're actually remarkably consistent with egg laying from year on year, regardless of weather conditions. So they do breed quite fast, especially for a large eagle. So fresh eggs weigh between 120 to 148 grams, with an average of 133 grams for the first egg and 124 for the second. And the replacement clutch is laid. Usually a single egg is laid. It can be a little 112 grams. So average egg dimensions keep in accordance to the female body size. The smallest mean size is from Turkey, where you find the smallest eagles. And as you get the bigger eagles, you get bigger sizes, things like that. The female does about 80-90% of the incubation, and all no nighttime incubation. However, in Norway, the male will contribute sometimes. There may be as many as 11 changes in incubation individual during the day, and the clutch is unguarded was 20 minutes. That's the longest period they've been unguarded. And the time range for incubation varies between 34 to 46 days, but usually between 38 to 42 days. And then, they all hatch. And then, they hatch, and you have baby eagles. And new hatchlings weigh between 90 to 100 grams. Or in many parts of their range, they can be up to about 115. in areas, which is quite cool. They first become audible within 2 to 3 days of hatching and active enough to move around the nest and excrete over the nest edge by about 10 days. And they have, you can see, they've got quite a thick wool color typically when they're young. And the eaglets can feed themselves starting at 35 to 40 days, and that's where they start to get the first feathers coming poking up from the down. Wing flapping begins at about 42 days, and after 7 weeks of age, they're more alert and stronger and freely manipulate sticks and walks more. At about 8 weeks, only the long feathers on the wing and the tail have not yet developed, and then fledging occurs from mid-late to July to mid to late July in Norway, but it depends on other areas as well. And the female does most of the brooding, and they actually do all the brooding early and will be especially allowed to leave the nest. Therefore, at 14 to 28 days, the brooding kind of declines in the female. So stay around, but they tend to kind of do their own thing. And then they kind of start to develop. The 4 to 5 carcasses may be brought to them, and then about 40 days, they'll start to about 1 or 2. They're usually brought around and try and teach them as well. They're typically gone from the nest beginning of July, and they're typically fully independent by late August. And then they reach sexual maturity at about 5 to 6 years of age in these eagles. In terms of failures, though, they typically raise 1 or 2 chicks. That's typically how they go. From a clutch of 3, the average breeding success is about 1.1 to 1.6 babies per year, which is actually pretty good. And about 33% of nesting attempts fail to produce young, which is sometimes be as many as 75% due to areas with heavy pesticide use or persecution. Natural threats include siblicide, so one baby eating the other. Known predators of eggs and nestlings when they get the chance is red foxes, martens, and bears. Even if the nestling is on overly accessible areas, wild boars have been seen to eat them if they fall out of the nest too early. Avian predators are rare, but they will get eaten by crows, ravens, and marsh harriers, which is, can be dangerous. But in terms of relationship with humans, they did formerly breed quite across Europe, extending as much as Western Europe and pretty much almost continuously across the Mediterranean. But they were went almost extinct in Europe in the 19th century and went extinct in the British Isles in the early 1900s. In some areas, they've become much less extinct. And the cause of this decline was commercial fishing, the creation of farmland, knocking down all those trees, but also DDT was another big thing as well. That really hurt them a lot, some of the other species. But there has been a lot of conservation methods to try and breed them in order to offset kind of that chemical and poisoning as well. There was lots of efforts to actually feed these eagles uncontaminated food in Sweden and several parts of Europe as well. They've allowed them to recolonize parts of their former range. So they're actually quite a good conservation story. And stopping the use of things like DDT has really helped them as well. And there actually are areas such in the UK, they've been reintroducing them into Scotland as well. And especially as recently as 2007 and 2019, they actually managed to release 6 juveniles as well. So they've been really good in helping them. And despite their the densities is actually great increase, so they're a great conservation success story. They've been doing quite well and expanding. There's believed to be late 1990s, it's estimated Russia had held as many as 7,000 pairs, and is believed to be about 175 pairs in Greenland and about 3,500 pairs in Europe. So they seem to be doing quite well, and they've re-established themselves in many parts of their range, which is quite cool. So yeah, doing quite good. And in terms of prehistory, they actually found an eagle in a tomb that were buried by prehistoric people. So that's quite an interesting little, tidbit there. So yeah, really, really cool. Nice to see that they're doing well. They are considered least concern, I believe. Let me just check. Yeah, they are considered least concern and, doing a lot better now that DDT is not really used anymore. Yeah, really, really cool. Definitely love a nice eagle there. So that's another one done by Great Cakes Mod. Next one's done also by Great Cakes Mod. We're going into prehistory. We're going into the Miocene, middle Miocene. So we'll have a look at these guys. So these guys is called Diagolurus. Really cool little guy here. This is a cool extinct species. Why are you struggling to just click on properly? What are you doing this to me? There we are. Perfect. So this is Diagolurus, or San Diego's cat. These guys are an extinct genus of placental mammal in the family Machaerodontidae, within the extinct family Oxydiidae. So they're not related to cats very much at all. They're like a type of really weird early carnivoran. Either from the Middle Eocene, not the Miocene. So these guys were found as it contains only one species, Delurus van Varbergene, which was found in the Sangano Formation in California. And these guys lived in the Wintian stage of the Middle Eocene, so between 46 to 37 million years ago, or 39.7 million years ago. And the name comes from the city San Diego, where it was found, in the ancient Greek Alurus, which means cat. And its specific name, is named after Blair van Valkenburg in honor of her research contributing to carnivorous mammals and saber-toothed predator paleoecology. So, in honor to honor the work that that person's done or what she's done. So, in terms of discovery, it was discovered in Oceanside, San Diego County by paleontologist Brad Riney in 1988. The fossil was housed for over 3 decades in a museum until in 2022. The fossils were described and recovered as a new genus and species. This creature is so far the only North American species of Machaerodontine, known outside of Utah and Wyoming. And according to the paper on the creature, this present study highlights how poorly documented the record is. So in terms of its description, it was small in stature, probably similar in size to a fossa. The holotype contains a mandible with a well-preserved dentition. And discovery has actually made paleontologists questioned whether this group extinction was caused by the large faunal turnover at the end of the Eocene. This creature is in the subfamily some of the first predatory saber-tooths to evolve, even 30 million years before Machaerodonts developed their saber-tooths and evolved in the Miocene. But due to the lack of remains, it's questionable this animal's ecological niches, but its relatives suggest it was a hypercarnivorous animal. It was actually the latest surviving member of its subfamily, so it's kind of the last of the Oxodon saber-tooth oxodontids. So that's quite cool. In terms of extinction, along with other members of the subfamily went extinct in the Eocene. A supported theory is that it went extinct with a large faunal turnover, potentially caused by climate change, like the freezing of Antarctica, which had distributed ocean currents. Many of the primitive mammals that were there at the time were actually replaced by groups that we know today, such as true rhinos, beavers, and oreodonts and other things, as well as hedgehogs and other more advanced things like artiodactyls, so modern ungulates. It seems like these guys went extinct and then role was filled by Nimravids, which was a group of felids in the group Felidae. So that's another saber-tooth animal. So that's the one before saber-tooth. So you had these kind of guys, and you had the Nimravids and the Barbophilids, and then you had Machaerodonts, which were the ones that included Smilodon and those kind of guys. But these guys are not that closely related to these guys as well. So the Oxodontids, these guys are placental mammals, and they're creodonts. They are within the clade Pancarnivora, so they're not quite in Carnivora. So they're quite distant in that regard. But yeah, quite cool. Another cool one. Yeah, another nice Great Cakes mod, always killing it in the game. So let's carry on to the next one. So last but certainly not least, we have got, by Great Cakes mod, yet again, we have got the South African giraffe. So let's have a look at these guys. So the South African giraffe, or the Cape giraffe, or Giraffa, or Giraffa Camelopsis giraffa. These guys are a subspecies of giraffe found in South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Eswatini, and Mozambique. And you can see is rounded with blotched spots. With star-like extensions on a light tan running on the hooves. So you can see there is a bit of variety there. Some of them are a little bit more star-like, but it just seems I didn't get any of those varieties today. That's okay. So, the IUCN currently recognizes only one species of giraffe, but there has been a lot of taxonomic debate on how many species of giraffe are there. The kind of consensus is either one giraffe, there's either 3 species, 4 species, or 9 species. So the most agree, basically saying each subspecies is its own species. But at the moment, the most supported, there's kind of like an in-between. The most supported ones is either the northern giraffe, the southern giraffe, which is the one it'd be, and the Maasai giraffe, we call that the eastern giraffe, are 3 species. And then sometimes the reticulated giraffe is considered its own species. The one that you typically think of, the giraffes, that's the reticulated giraffe, the one that's in the base game. That is sometimes considered its own species, or a member of the northern giraffe. So that's the consensus at the moment, either 3 or 4 species of giraffe. So in terms of that consensus, this would be the southern giraffe, because it's from South Africa. So it would be a couple other subspecies with it, I believe. Not the Maasai, but the South African. And we'll actually have a quick look. So the other subspecies that would be included with the South African giraffe would be the South African Angolan giraffe as well. Would be the Angolan giraffe, and the South African giraffe would be within the southern giraffe. The Maasai giraffe would have the Maasai giraffe and Thornscraft giraffe. The reticulated giraffe is sometimes also called the Somali giraffe. That would be its own species. And the northern giraffe, or Camelopus, would have the Kordofan, the Nubian, the Rothschild, and the West African, and sometimes a reticulated giraffe. So that's kind of how they work in their taxonomy. But in terms of its anatomy and stuff, not too different from other giraffes. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff, a lot of cool facts you can go on about giraffes. But in terms of the South African giraffe, they have dark, somewhat rounded patches with some fine projections or tawny brown colours there. The spots extend down to legs and get smaller, and the medial lump in the males is actually quite a bit less developed. As I mentioned, they can be found in South Africa, mostly northern South Africa, southern Botswana, southern Zimbabwe, and southwest of Mozambique. And after local extinctions in quite a lot of places, there actually has been efforts to reintroduce these guys into many parts of South Africa, Southern Africa, not South Africa, including Eswatini. They are common both inside and outside protected areas, and they typically prefer savannas and woodlands where food plants are available. And they are herbivorous, some of the other giraffes, and they tend to prefer leaves, forests, flowers, fruits, and shoots of woody plants such as acacias. They also live in a fusion-fission society, so they they're typically based on age, sex, season, and kingship, and they're also known to be quite adaptable to environmental changes, which is quite interesting as well. In terms of their threats at present, at the South African giraffe, populations believed to be about 37,000 individuals, which has actually increased over 150% over the past 3 decades. And the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, a body that administrates, official endangered species lists, has considered moving this giraffe from least concern to vulnerable status in the red list report, which has been interesting as well. So it has kind of moved up a bit, making sure that it's, even though it's gone down a bit, and though it does, this means the animal faces extinction in the wild with medium-term future, if nothing is done to minimize the threats of its life and habitat. But they are uncommonly in captivity. As of 2010, there's only about 45 South African giraffes in zoos, but they are kept in captivity in their native range. About 12,000 privately owned, 12,000 South African giraffes are found in privately owned farms, ranches, national parks that maintain the population. So they're doing quite well in that regard. So not too bad in terms of other subspecies. And we'll have to have a look at the cute little baby. Why can't we not have a look at the cute little baby giraffe? How can you not love these little guys? Alright, so I think this is a great place to end the video. So thank you, Scott, and Great Cakes. Don't have to thank too many modders today. But thank you all for your contributions. Bloody brilliant. Love to see more mods coming out. So, yeah, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always click that little bell icon to get notified about anything. So, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe. And bye-bye.